Battle of the Planets.
What if one of the most exciting shows from childhood wasn't actually the real show at all? Now, for kids growing up in the late 1970s, Battle of the Planets felt like the ultimate sci-fi adventure. It had fast ships, colourful heroes, and massive battles that looked unlike anything else on TV. It felt futuristic, exciting, and perfectly timed with the space craze that was sweeping pop culture. But behind that excitement was something most viewers never realised, because the show they were watching wasn't the original story. It was a heavily edited, rewritten version of something much darker and much more complex. So what really was Battle of the Planets, and how did the changes that made it successful also lead to its downfall? Now, to understand that, everything has to go back before the show even existed in America. And years before Battle of the Planets aired, there was a completely different series in Japan. It was called Science Ninja Team Gatchaman, and it premiered in 1972. Now, at its core, it followed 5 young heroes fighting to protect Earth from a dangerous organization trying to control the planet's resources. But unlike most shows aimed at younger audiences, this one didn't hold back. The tone was darker, the stakes were higher, and the consequences felt real. Characters didn't always walk away unharmed. Cities could be destroyed, and the story explored ideas like war, loss, and environmental damage in a way that stood out from typical animation at the time. Even the villain felt different. Instead of a simple enemy, the main antagonist was layered, unpredictable, and unlike anything most audiences had seen before. And over time, the show became a major success in Japan. But what made it unique also made it difficult to bring overseas, because American television at the time wasn't ready for something like that. So, when the opportunity came to bring the show to the United States, one major question had to be answered. How do you take something complex and turn it into something acceptable for kids' television? And the answer changed everything. So in 1977, an American producer discovered the series while searching for new content. And at the exact same time, something else happened that would shape the decision. Star Wars was released, and suddenly, sci-fi wasn't just popular, it was everywhere. And that created a perfect opportunity. The original show had the action, the visuals, and the energy to fit right into that trend, but it needed to be changed. A lot. And the goal wasn't to bring the original story to America, the goal was to reshape it. And that meant, of course, cutting anything that felt too intense, too complicated, or too risky for younger audiences. Violence was reduced, serious themes were softened, characters were simplified, entire moments were removed. And what was left had to be rebuilt into something new. So when Battle of the Planets premiered in 1978, the result looked impressive. The visuals were fast and exciting, the characters stood out, the action felt bigger than anything else on television at the time.
The sound of Mark's sonic boomerang caused slight temporary concussions among the enemy.
And audiences, of course, responded. The show quickly spread across the country, reaching more and more viewers. And for many kids, this was their first exposure to animation that felt different from anything else they had seen. It wasn't slow or simple. It felt energetic, it felt bold, and it worked. But underneath that success, something wasn't quite right. Because the more the show was changed, the more the original story started to break. Entire scenes had to be removed, leaving gaps that made the plot pretty confusing. Characters made decisions that didn't always make sense, and moments that were meant to feel serious suddenly felt quite disconnected. So, the producers came up with a solution. They added something that didn't exist in the original at all, a brand new character. And this character was designed to explain what was happening, fill in missing pieces, and smooth over the parts of the story that no longer worked. He would appear, provide explanations, and reassure viewers whenever something confusing or intense happened. And at first, it seemed like a simple fix, but it created a new problem, because instead of improving the story, it interrupted it. Moments that were supposed to feel intense were suddenly paused for explanations. Scenes that were meant to build tension lost their impact. The pacing changed, the tone shifted, and slowly the story lost some of what made it powerful in the first place.
900 fathoms beneath the surface of the seas is this secret and extremely important world defense base.
But the biggest issue wasn't just how the show was edited, it was how it ended, or more accurately, how it didn't. because the original series had a full story, complete with important moments and a clear ending. But the American version didn't include all of it. Several key episodes were never adapted, and that meant something important was missing. The conclusion? For viewers following the story, waiting to see how everything would play out, the ending never really came. The show simply stopped. No final resolution, no clear outcome, no satisfying payoff. After building up characters and conflicts over time, everything just faded away. And that left audiences with something incomplete. At the same time, the world around the show was changing. New animated series were arriving with stronger storytelling, clearer direction, and bigger support from merchandise. Other shows weren't just entertaining, they were building full franchises with toys, products, and ongoing stories that kept audiences engaged. And compared to that, Battle of the Planets started to feel a bit limited. It had style, of course, it had energy, but it didn't have a complete foundation to keep growing. And without that, it just couldn't compete. Attempts were made to bring it back, new versions were created, the material was repackaged, different approaches were tested, but none of them captured the same attention. Because the original success wasn't just about the visuals, it was about the moment in time. It was about introducing something new to an audience that had never seen anything like it before. And of course, once that moment passed, it became much harder to recreate. But even with all of its changes, the show left something behind, because for many viewers, it was their first introduction to a completely different style of storytelling.
Stop! You can't go after it all alone.
It's from Spectra. This is the third time we've been invaded by them.
It opened the door to something bigger, and years later, when audiences discovered the original version, the difference was clear. The story was deeper, the tone was stronger, and the world felt just more complete. And that realization changed how people saw the show. What once felt like a simple cartoon became something more complicated, a version of a story that had been reshaped, simplified, and altered for a completely different audience. And that, on its own, gave it a new kind of legacy. Not just as a popular show, but as an example of how stories can change when they move between cultures. Because sometimes, in trying to make something more accessible, important pieces are lost. But at the same time, something else is gained. Exposure, introduction, a first step into something new. That's what makes Battle of the Planets so unique. It wasn't the original story, but it was the version that millions of people experienced first. And that experience stayed with them. So what really caused its rise and fall? Well, its rise came from perfect timing, striking visuals, and the ability to feel new and exciting. But its fall came from heavy editing, missing pieces, and a story that never fully delivered on its potential. But its impact didn't disappear, because even after the show faded, the memory of it remained. The ships, the characters, the feeling of watching something different. And for many, that was enough. Some shows are remembered for what they were, others are remembered for what they introduced, and sometimes even an incomplete story can leave a lasting mark.